The end. Can you go back and help Luke and Leia make better choices? Oops.
How you get so big to do food of this kind?
Hello and welcome. It's time to talk about a fun little book I just picked up and got to read through. This is Choose Your Destiny, a Luke and Leia Adventure. It is the second book in a series, the first one being Choose Your Destiny, a Han and Chewie adventure. If you want, you can go ahead and check out the video I made about this book if you click over here. I read this one and I enjoyed it greatly, and I was very excited to pick up the second. The second isn't really a second in the series in that you don't really need to read the first one, so if Luke and Leia sound more interesting to you than Han and Chewie, you can jump in here, or you can start with Han and Chewie. Doesn't necessarily matter, although I highly recommend reading them both. Both books are written by Cavan Scott, also from the Adventures in Wild Space series. He wrote for From a Certain Point of View. If you want, we've actually had the opportunity to talk to Cavan a couple of times. If you click here, you can see our first interview with him and his appearance on our streamcast. And the wonderful art in both of these books is done by Elsa Chartier. Both of them are returning for a third book in the series, which is an Anakin and Obi-Wan adventure, which is coming soon. So right off the bat, to kind of talk about what this book is, if you're not familiar with the Choose Your Destiny series, it's a choose your own adventure book, which is what the kids played before there were role-playing video games. It's a book where you follow along with Luke and Leia, and they find themselves in an adventure to track down a missing Rebel Alliance ship, and at different places in the story, you'll hit a point where you're asked, do Luke and Leia do option A or option B? Then you must go to that page, and then you determine whether or not you've made the correct choice. Inevitably, sometimes these choices lead to a dead end, and then you must go back to the page you were on prior in order to kind of continue the story down another branch. This second book is also part of the Flight of the Falcon kind of overarching series. There's several books that exist in the Flight of the Falcon series. Basically, it's the story of the Millennium Falcon from the time it gets constructed all the way through the movies until it ultimately ends up on the planet of Batuu. Batuu is the planet that we're going to see in Galaxy's Edge, which is the Star Wars world that's being built in the Disney theme parks. It's not so much an official series as much as just kind of a fun way to map a timeline as we kind of follow everyone's favorite ship through the course of Star Wars history. Oddly enough, the first book is not a part of the Flight of the Falcon series, but I think that's because the series kind of started after this Choose Your Destiny series was out. But if you see this symbol on anything that you might be reading, be it Star Wars Adventure comics or other young readers' books, that's what it is, and don't be dissuaded when you see it. It's not necessarily a series that you have to read in order. It's just kind of a fun thing to have that connects all of these different books. But enough about these different series itself. Let's get into how I feel about the book. And how I feel about the book is it was a lot of fun. I literally sat down and read this in like a sitting. And when I say read it, I mean I had like multiple bookmarks going in the pages because every time I hit a decision point, I wanted to see where both branches took me. I think I managed to catch every single one, so I've kind of been through the whole thing and literally just sat down and couldn't stop. I was so engaged in what was going on. Definitely the choosing your paths part is a large part of that. I made the crack about video games earlier. I'm a big fan of choice-based video games, and so this kind of goes back full circle. That this really is where a lot of that kind of story choice came from in the games we play today. So it was really fun to kind of read this in book form because I didn't read a lot of these when I was a kid, so I'm kind of experiencing this in reverse order. But the adventure was just really fun. Oddly enough, the funnest parts of the book were the parts where the book went wrong. It was fun, as weird as it sounds, to read Luke doing something really un-Luke-like, because you're just like, Luke wouldn't say that. But that's when you realize you made the choice that Luke would never have made to begin with. Hearing Princess Leia, like, just give up was just such an odd thing because I've never read that before. So it's just kind of a fun what-if portion to the book when you're looking at it from a non-canon perspective. But then the canon storyline, which is, of course, the correct way that you get from the start of the book to the end of the book, was really well written, and the characters really felt like the characters we knew, so I enjoyed going along on this adventure with them. Of course, the book is filled with references. There is a reference to a particular green rabbit, who's a particular favorite of the author, as anybody who follows him on Twitter would know. And I also really enjoyed there's a reference to the pirate gang leader that we see in Star Wars Resistance in this book as well. We kind of see a much younger version of him. So it's cool to see how this is being interwoven between old and new Star Wars. And if you like Easter eggs, this is a really good book for that purpose. But I gotta say, fun stuff aside, this book got pretty intense at different points. One thing I've really appreciated about both of these books and some of the middle grade novels that we're seeing, such as Adventures in Wild Space and that sort of thing, these books really don't talk down to kids, right? I don't want to spoil the story, I don't want to get into the story too much, but Luke and Leia stumble across a group of people on a planet that are being oppressed, that are in need of help. And while the book isn't gory or scary or in anything where you need to be worried about a child reading it, a child's going to read this and know what's good and know what's evil. And I think it does a really good job of kind of conveying a morality to younger readers in a way that's really important. And on that point, I know I said earlier it's fun to read the kind of non-canon branches to see where the story goes, but you do have to watch yourself because some of them get pretty real pretty fast, and you never know when you're going to find yourself in the darkest of timelines. But I am really doing a disservice to this book and its predecessor, the Han and Chewie Adventure, if I don't talk about the artwork. The artwork is so much fun. It captures so much of these characters that we know and love. It's stylized in a way that's really fun, that conveys action really well. It's really easy to kind of look at these still images and feel like they're alive on the page, as if you're watching the movie play out in front of you. Some of my favorite images are actually down the non-canon paths, which I think is a testament to how much they cared about putting art into the book, that you're not just using them as a reward, but that you get to see all of these actions carry out, even the ones that may not have actually come to pass. And I gotta say, even if you're not that interested in a choose-your-own adventure book, or you're not as interested in a kid's book for yourself, the art is just spectacular, and it's really worth picking up just to see these really amazing full-color images right there on the page. There you have it. Those are my thoughts on the second book. Like I said, I highly recommend both of them. If you're into just kind of like a fun romp, if you're looking for something really cool for your kids to read, 100% a recommendation as well. But if you read these stories, let me know what you thought about them in the comments. If you're not already, follow us on Twitter at Port Haven Forums, and consider following the author and the artist of this story as well on Twitter. They're both a lot of fun to chat with. Visit port-haven.com for even more from us, and until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking candy box!